Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. The US-Israel combined air attacks on Iran have decapitated Iran's leadership and further destroyed their missile production capacity. How have these strikes managed to be so effective, and how well are countries in the region defending against the haphazard retaliation by Iran? Well, to answer those questions, we're joined by Reuben Johnson. He's director at the Casimir Pulaski Foundation. Reuben, welcome back and thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, sir.
So we have this incredibly accurate and effective air war, if you like, air attacks on Iranian facilities. And the leadership, none of them seem to have been stopped. How is that possible? Didn't Iran have any defenses?
No, because if you remember this war, this very short war last year in June between Israel and Iran, with the U.S. aiding and some other countries as well, that much of the Iranian air defense systems were destroyed, including all of the S-400s from Russia, which is the most advanced Russian air defense system that exists right now. So having had that degraded to the level that it is, and not nearly enough time to rebuild it, that accounts for the lack of, and I'm not sure the Iranian air defenses were ever all that good to begin with, given the fact they're under so many sanctions and they're limited as to what they can procure.
Okay, so the defense is a bit dodgy, but on the other hand, the attacks were extremely focused. How does that happen?
Well, first of all, we know from past experience that the Israelis have very, very, very good information about what's going on inside of these countries, and they've had a reputation over the years. They've killed people in Tehran when they needed to. They killed people in Damascus under the Assad government when they felt like they had to. And their mechanisms, not only their human intelligence networks, but the electronic intercepts, they're extremely adept at this. And remember, they've only got the one or two targets. It's not like the United States that has global responsibilities and has to listen to so many different countries around the world. The Israelis have a much narrower threat profile, and they can focus on that, and they do an excellent job of it. Plus, they've got some very, very good intelligence people, one of whom was interviewed this week by the Telegraph, who spent 25 years handling the issues of Iran's and analyzing the Iran threat to Israel. So there's no shortage of effort put into this by them.
Okay, so what happens next, Reuben, in Iran?
Well, next is what's happening is two things. There's an effort by the U.S. and its allies to degrade and destroy the internal security apparatus, the people who've been machine gunning tens of thousands of unarmed protesters in the streets. And then, if you just saw recently in the last hour or so, there was a press conference at the Pentagon where the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of War have pointed out that they're going to start, as they call it, they say we're going to start moving further inland. We're going to start moving. We've hit the main facilities and some of the main nodes we wanted to take out, and now we're going to take this to the next level. So we're going to see a further degradation. And what they're hoping, I'm not sure that this is going to work, what they're hoping is that if enough of the Iranian security apparatus is dismantled or destroyed, then people will take to the streets in larger numbers, and they'll finish toppling this regime, because no one wants to put boots on the ground.
Right. Well, I'll come back to boots on the ground in just a second. There's a short soundbite from Secretary Rubio that I'd like to share with you and the audience. I'll get your view on it.
They are producing, by some estimates, over 100 of these missiles a month. Compare that to the 6 or 7 interceptors that can be built a month. They can build 100 of these a month, not to mention the thousands of one-way attack drones they also have. They've been doing this for a very long time, and by the way, they've been doing it under sanctions.
So there's Secretary Rubio pointing out that they are well stocked with these missiles, and they still seem to be producing them at quite a rate. How are Israel and the US going to stop that?
Well, they're going to have to build more hardware, more missiles. And this is a very sore point with me, because I've been asking since 2022, when we were building only 500 MSE interceptors for the Patriot battery per year. And I kept asking, well, when is production going to surge? We're going to need more of these. Oh, it'll take 2 years to increase production. 2 years later, I ask, and I get the same answer. So people have been very, very slow to react. And so we're talking now about ramping up the number of missiles that can be produced for the Patriot and other air defense systems. But it's going to take until 2030 or later to reach a level that is going to be even close to sufficient. But the other thing that has to happen is we need to stop shooting down arrows, as they say. We need to start killing the archers. You need to start hitting the factories where these things are built, so they can't build anymore.
Right. Now, there have been attacks in a very haphazard way, it must be said, by Iran, with missiles going, hitting most countries in the Middle East, including, of course, many US assets. Is what you've just said a reflection of the lack of sufficient air defense that those US bases had?
Well, it's not a question of being a lack of sufficient. It's number one is not sufficient in that not necessarily having enough missiles, but also not a lot of practice. Someone out there has said this, and I've said it, that, to these countries in the Middle East, hello, welcome to Ukraine. This is what the country where I used to live has been going through for the last 4 years. And President Zelensky has even come forward and has even offered Ukrainian assistance for these Gulf states, saying, we're glad to share our insights and what we've learned and some of the ways that we've devised to defend against these missiles. But there's a quid pro quo. You've got to turn around and pressure your buddies, the Russians, to sign a ceasefire.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned Ukraine. I'd like to ask you what impact this war in Iran is going to have on Russia's ability to prosecute the invasion.
Well, they're obviously going to lose a lot of the material they've been receiving. These Shahid drones, which Russia has been using, Russia builds them now in large numbers, but they're not going to be getting what they used to receive from Iran on a regular basis in terms of munitions and other military assistance. And ultimately, the Russians, and ultimately, the Russians will have other problems as this war continues on. They're going to see assets of theirs that are providing revenue for their military destroyed. There was a liquid natural gas tanker owned by the Russians that was blown up in the Mediterranean just yesterday, and we still don't know who was responsible, but it kind of indicators point towards it was a Ukrainian drone attack. Now, that means the Ukrainians have moved, if true, they've moved their maritime drone attacks out of the Black Sea and into the Mediterranean. That's going to be a serious problem for the Russians.
Well, there seem to be a series of serious problems, starting with sanctions, destruction of tankers, and so on. Is this moving the needle strategically against Russia? Just briefly, if you want.
Very slowly, but yeah, just very slowly, but yes. There's all kinds of indicators in Russia, huge arrears in paying people's salaries, all kinds of a whole raft of economic problems, not being able to mobilize enough personnel per month, not being able to build enough weaponry. And all of this stuff will eventually catch up to Putin, who, by the way, is bankrupting his country by doing all this.
Right. Well, the sooner the better, I think many would say. Reuben Johnson, as always, thank you so much for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. You too.
Bye-bye. Brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away. Lots more coming up. Goodbye.